Hello everyone and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I am broadcasting to you live from Budapest, Hungary, where currently the time is 3 p.m. We are in September 6th and today we are starting our writing section lessons for IELTS. Again, these are coming from our online course. This is course session 13. For those of you who are following each of these lessons. Again, the materials come from our websites, so if you're studying for academic IELTS, please visit us at aehelp.com. That's for academic IELTS. And if you're studying for general IELTS, then visit us at ghelp.com, where we have lots of great materials for you to increase your band scores. Strategies that work, that we test, that we use ourselves when we do these exams. Interactive practice tests, videos, all kinds of goodies. If you haven't downloaded our app yet, you can get it from your Google Play Store. Look for Academic IELTS Help and our logo. Hello everyone who's joining in. Hi Thompson Paul, Mohammed. Hi Nears Don. Hi Mariam D. Hi Jeffrey, good to see you in class. Very studious. Hi, Handsome Rob. All right, a couple of quick announcements as we get going here. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, you can always contact me. My email is adrian@aehelp.com. That's my name, at aehelp.com. You can get editing services on our website, corrections and feedback. You can also schedule mock IELTS speaking interviews so you can build confidence and know what you're doing well and what you need to improve. All right, so this is, again, just a quick peek at our live streaming schedule. We are in Central European time. Today we're doing part 13 of our course. Tomorrow we're going to have a members chat-only class for Task 2 writing, a problems and solutions type question. One of our members requested that. It's one of the perks of being a member. You get our exams and you get to request classes. Then we continue with the writing section with the full online course, and then another members chat only on the 9th. Couple days break on Monday, Tuesday, 10th and 11th, and then back full speed 12th to the 16th. All right. Hi, Naveen. Good to see you in class as well. And hello, everybody. Okay, so IELTS writing. Let's start by looking at what that is, what you need to pay attention to, and how you navigate that part of the exam. So let's start right from the beginning. The IELTS writing section, okay? Even if you're familiar with IELTS writing already, it's good to go back, revisit some of the basics, especially for grammar and such. I still find a lot of students making too many simple grammar mistakes. We have lots of help for you on the website as well. So what we're going to be looking at here is task 1 and task 2. So IELTS writing is, the writing section is made up of 2 tasks. It is handwritten, okay? So when you sit the IELTS exam, the sitting portion of the exam starts, of course, with the listening section, which is about 40-50 minutes. Then you have about an hour for the reading, and then you have another hour for the writing section. That will be handwritten. I keep emphasizing that because these days we're very used to writing on our computers and our phones, and we don't practice handwriting as much. So practicing your handwriting is important for the IELTS writing. It's very different, okay? Not just in the way that it looks. Of course, you realize that writing on a computer and by hand looks very different. But what a lot of students don't pay attention to is that writing on a computer, you use your fingers. And writing on a piece of paper, you use one hand and you use a very different technique. As you can imagine, you're using different parts of your brain, different motor skills that are connected to different parts of your thinking. So your brain actually works differently when you're writing on the computer versus when you're writing by hand. That's why it's so important to practice handwriting and not just writing on the computer when you're getting ready for IELTS, okay? So task one, it'll take 20 minutes, and it is 150 words, and it's worth 1/3 of your total mark in the writing. You should always start with that, okay? It's worth about 33% of your total score. So if you make a bit more mistakes in task one as you're getting warmed up, it's better to make mistakes in task one than task two. Sometimes I get emails from students and they say, I did a great job in task one and I still got a bad score. Well, that's probably because of task two. So if you're doing well in task one, it's likely task two that's bringing your score down. And task two is worth 2/3 of your mark, and that makes sense because it's twice the amount of time that's given for task two, and almost twice as many words, okay? So for task two, you have 40 minutes, and you have 250 words. Task one will be 3 paragraphs. Task two will be 4 paragraphs, or should be 4 paragraphs, unless you're going for a band 8, 9. In that case, you might want to push 5 or 6 paragraphs, but definitely quality is always more important than quantity, okay? So even if you can write 300 words in 40 minutes, if the quality is better when you write 220 or 250 words in 40 minutes, it's the better choice, okay? So quality always over quantity. All right, so that's just a quick look at what you need to do. Now, a question for a lot of our viewers that watch these classes regularly. What type of essay is task one? What kind of essay is task one? There are 4 main kinds of writing, and task one and task two test 2 of the 4, and these 2 are used in university. We're looking at academic writing right now. Roshni Kunte says it's persuasive. Baljit says it's descriptive. No, task 1 is actually expository. Okay, task 1 is called expository writing, which aims to explain an idea, a concept, a process. Of course, in task 1, that's usually a graph or a diagram. All right, task 2 is a persuasive essay. Persuasive essay means that you convince your audience of an opinion or an idea. So task 1, expository. Task 2, persuasive. We'll talk more about that as we go along. Okay, so in this section for task 1, we're going to look at the different types of task 1s that you can be provided in the IELTS exam. We'll talk about their applications. That's a really important point. It's missed by a lot of students. We'll talk about the structure. I'll give you examples, and then we'll do some practice. And then with task 2, we'll talk about the planning, the structure, and we'll practice that as well. So over the next 6, 7 classes or so, that's going to be our focus, okay? First task 1, and then task 2. Again, task 1 here is for academic because this is our academic YouTube channel. Our general IELTS YouTube channel is found at General IELTS Help YouTube channel, so you can check that out. Okay, so let's talk first then a little bit more about understanding the task 1 and task 2 questions. So when you get to the IELTS, you finish your listening, you finish your reading, you open your booklet, and you see your task 1 question. What do you do? Okay, well, the first step is paraphrase the question. Paraphrase means write down the question using your own words, using synonyms, antonym negatives, expressions, to paraphrase the question. So state it the same idea but with different words, okay? Let's do that with an example that I've selected for us today. So here, we'll just do it with a task 2 question, okay? So here's a task 2 question. Write about the following topic. Some people prefer to work alone, others in a team. What are the advantages and disadvantages of these? Okay, so if you get this kind of a question, now you do paraphrasing for task 1 and task 2. I just chose task 2 because it's a little bit more applicable. So let's paraphrase this. Try to paraphrase this. So try to write this down using your own words. Let's see how you do. I'm going to do the same. Let's see if you match with me or if you do something different. There are many ways to do it. Okay. So certain individuals, certain instead of some, individuals instead of people, choose to work by themselves. Okay? So choose instead of prefer, work, kept that the same, that's okay. And instead of alone, I said by themselves. Others like to work in groups. Okay, so there you have it. Others kept that the same, and instead of in a team, I said like to work in groups. Okay, so this is saying the same as this first sentence here, just in my own words. Now, I can use that sentence in my introduction. Okay, it's not the only information in my introduction, but I can use that in my introduction. More importantly, it helps me to focus on the question, and it also helps me to make sure that I clearly understand the question. One of the very common mistakes that students do when they get to the writing section is they read the question very quickly and then they start writing. Okay, so I'll give you a typical example. An IELTS candidate opens up the writing section, they see this question, they go, okay, some people prefer to work alone, others in a team, what are the advantages and disadvantages? And then they just start writing. And too often, they don't pay attention to some of the details of the question, and their essay is not on topic, and it's not focusing on the right controlling ideas. That leads to a low score. Keep this in mind. Even if you write a really good essay, so good grammar, good structure, good information, if your essay does not answer the question exactly, if it's off topic, then you will still get a low score. So you will not get a band 7 or a band 8, or maybe even less than a 6. Does anybody know why? So why do you get a low score on your essays if you're not answering the question exactly? Why do you think the IELTS people aren't generous or aren't kind enough to say, oh, it's a great essay, we'll give this person a 8 anyway, they wrote such a good essay? So why do you think IELTS makes sure not to do that? Okay, so answer that question for me. Now, we're not finished paraphrasing here. We want to paraphrase the second half of this question as well, just to make sure we have the full idea. So what are some benefits and deficits of these? Okay, so benefits instead of advantages, and deficits instead of disadvantages. Okay, again, making sure that I'm focusing on the exact question. That's still an important part of the paraphrase. You don't have to paraphrase anymore, just that bolded part of the question. Okay. So Anu Chaudhary, to my previous question, says, well, there's no task achievement, so you're not actually achieving the task. That's right, Anu, you're bang on. So there's no task achievement. There's 2 reasons why you can lose marks for no task achievement. One, you don't write enough words, and the other is you write off topic. If you write off topic, you'll lose a lot of marks. The big reason for that is the IELTS people know that some students try to memorize essays on some topics. So there are a lot of students around the world who prepare for IELTS by practicing specific topics like education, business, work, communication, and then they practice a couple of essays in each of these topics, and they hope that they get something similar or similar kind of topic, and then basically they just take that memorized essay and those memorized expressions and phrases and they write them down. Now, that is obviously not showing true English skill. So the IELTS people don't know if a student just memorized an essay or if they didn't pay attention to the question. But in either case, they cannot give you a high mark because you haven't proven to them a true ability for English that can be validated, that can be clearly assessed, okay? So keep that in mind. So paraphrasing will help you to identify the exact details of the question and write on topic, okay? Now, another point here before we go back to the slides, the 250 words. Sometimes students see some of the examples on our website or in these videos, and they say, whoa, Adrian, you wrote 300 words. Or, whoa, you wrote 320 words. And they say that the task is only 250 words. Wrong. It's not only 250 words, okay? It doesn't say write only 250 words. It says write at least 250 words. Or sometimes you'll see write minimum 250 words, which is the same. That means you can write more than 250 words, so you can write 300, even 350 words if you're very good and quick. But you have to write at least 250 words. They do count your words, okay? They count your words, and if you don't have 250 words, you do start to lose marks. So a good question, some students say, well, how many marks do I lose? Like, let's say I write 200 words. Can I still get a good mark? Yes, you can, okay? If you have a really good task 1 and you have a good task 2 that's just, let's say, 200 words, I'm sure you could still get 7.5 even, as long as it's good quality, okay? You'll do better than if you write 300 words of bad quality, all right? So make sure you reach that 250 words. It's the absolute minimum. Okay, I don't recommend writing a lot of words, Nguyen. I recommend always quality over quantity, but I definitely do recommend practicing at home and targeting to reach the 250 word minimum. Okay, there is no maximum number of words, Naveen. So if you are some absolutely amazing author of English and in 40 minutes you can write a 600-word brilliant essay with all kinds of body paragraphs and conclusions, it's doable, it's possible, but unlikely. Okay, focus on quality. All right, so what do you do next with these questions? Task 1 and Task 2, again, it's really important to visualize. So you should realize here that I'm reiterating for you those 3 key strategies. So you should paraphrase the question using that skill of paraphrasing. You should be using visualizing, especially for Task 2. Okay, in Task 1, you have an image that helps you. But for Task 2, you should be seeing pictures. So in the example I just showed you, you should, in your mind, see somebody working by themselves at a table, working on a computer maybe, or writing on a piece of paper. And you should see people working in a team, getting together in a conference room, having a discussion, or maybe in a sport like football or basketball, working together in a team for a common goal, okay? And then next, you need to ask these critical questions of what, why, how. So critical thinking is very important, and we'll apply that later on, okay? Now this slide is just for our course, for those students who have our course at either ahelp.com or gieltshelp.com. When you're going through the writing section, you have these big red buttons that say work on it. You can click on those, and then you can actually type and practice, and you can send that to us to check and mark. So our editing services are a paid service because it requires our time. So this is an example of how we can help you with your writing. This was a response that was sent to us by a student. It's for task 1. You can see the overview, the body paragraph, the analysis, and then the summary, okay? We don't need to read that. That's just to give you an idea of what we do. So this slide is a little bit bright because it's a white image. Don't worry about that. But the idea here is if you use our editing services to improve your writing, what we do is we basically correct your essay, and we provide lots and lots of comments of what the mistakes actually were. And I know that some of our viewers use our editing services for IELTS Task 1 and Task 2. When we send you back the corrections and the comments, please make sure to read them and improve them on the next essay that you write, okay? So we're doing this for you and you're paying for this, so make sure that you use it, okay? Feedback is extremely important for both the writing and the speaking section. It's very difficult to improve if you're not getting feedback from a professional, okay? So spend a little, save a lot, all right? That's again the idea here. Okay, this is just continuing with our editing services. So let's talk a little bit about writing task 1 and what you need to do with writing task 1. So you describe, you analyze, and here we have the word conclude, but it's actually better to say summarize, okay? You conclude for task 2, you summarize for task 1. There's a slight difference there, and we will talk about it, okay? So for IELTS task 1, you can basically get 6 different types of questions. Don't be shocked, you can get a combination of these as well. So you could get a bar graph, kind of looks like this. It's a little bit faded, but you get the idea. You can get a line graph. Okay, a line graph looks like this. You can get a pie chart. Pie charts look like that. Obviously, if you're applying for university, you will most likely be using some of these in your studies. You can get a table like this. You can get a flow chart. Sometimes students ask me, well, Adrian, which one's the most common type of question? It's kind of a tricky answer. I would say that bar graphs, line graphs, pie charts, tables, and diagrams are roughly equally common. A little bit less common are flow charts, but you can get it, okay? So don't ignore this type of question. You could sit down in IELTS, and if you only prepared for bar graphs and so on, you might be surprised to get a flow chart. So careful, make sure you study at least 1 or 2 flow chart type questions. The good news is they're fairly easy to write for compared to the other ones. So if you get a flow chart and you know what you're doing, you should be able to get a really good score, okay? That's right, Nguyen. Yeah, flowcharts are a little bit less common, but they do happen, okay? You can see them on IELTS. And then the last one is a diagram. And with diagrams, IELTS has a lot of choices, okay? So you can get a diagram that's like this, or you could get a map, okay? You could get a map of a city, or even 2 maps that you have to compare and contrast. That's still a diagram, all right? Now, here is a very, very important point for IELTS Task 1 success, okay? It's the uses of graphs, charts, tables, and diagrams. The biggest mistake, or I should say the most common mistake that students make for IELTS Task 1 is they write like a line graph for every type of graph that they get. So what I mean is they'll get a bar graph or they'll get a pie chart, and the student will use language like, the pie chart shows between the 2 years that the use of computers is gradually increasing. That's not good. That's really bad language, and you'll get a bad mark. Pie charts don't show continuity, okay? They don't show that something continues over time. They just give you a picture of one time frame. So you can't use the same kind of language for a pie chart that you use for a line graph. It's really important to understand that difference, okay? If you write like a line graph for a pie chart in university, your professor is going to give you a really weird look and probably even ask you to talk to him after class to see what's going on, okay? So you want to practice this for IELTS before you get to university and not make this mistake on IELTS, okay? So that's right, Nguyen. Tables can show some continuity as well. We convert tables into line graphs. That's true, but again, tables are not exactly the same as line graphs, so you don't use the exact same language, okay? So it's very important to know what kind of language, what kind of grammar to use for each of these 6 different kinds of graphics, all right? It's the most common mistake. So here's where you can get your pencil and paper out and take some notes. I saw one student asking me there, if you're a full student or a full course student, do you have these editing services? Yes, you do. So whether you're a full student on our website or a trial student on our website, you can use those editing services that I talked about, okay? So here is a simple bar graph, fish caught in 2005. And then here is some useful vocabulary. You can note that down. Now, of course, the question here is, when do we use a bar graph? So when do we use a bar graph instead of a line graph or a pie chart? Well, here's your answer. Bar graphs are used to show comparisons and contrasts between nominal data on interval scales, okay? Basically, there are 4 types of data: ordinal, I'll start from the top: nominal data, ordinal data, interval data, and ratio data. All data, all information can be divided into one of those 4 scales. I'm sure some math students that are watching are going, yeah, I know what that is. So nominal means we simply give it a name, okay? This is let's see if I can increase the size here for you a bit so you can see it more clearly. So here you can see the x-axis, okay? The x-axis is the horizontal axis. The y-axis is the vertical axis. Those are good words to know. And on the x-axis, you can see the names of countries. So you see Canada, USA, Finland, Japan, Russia, Spain. That's called nominal data. Okay, it's naming data. So simply we just give it a name. Okay. Here, according to the border or the land that they occupy, the people and the culture, the history, they have a name: Finland, Japan. Can anybody think of other kinds of nominal data? So what other types of nominal data can you think of? Maybe something that you saw in a task 1 while you were preparing for IELTS. Okay. And then here on the y-axis, you have your interval data. Okay. Interval data is numbers. So you have 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, and it's thousands of tons of fish caught in 2005. So be very careful with the axes titles and the chart title, okay? For this type of a bar graph, a common mistake I might see students do is they'll say there were 20 tons of fish caught in Canada in 2005. Well, I'll let you know, Canada catches a lot more than 20 tons of fish. Even this might be an underestimate. This would be 20,000 tons of fish caught in 2005. So really pay attention to the details of these graphs and charts, okay? Don't rush. Remember, again, as a lot of our students have said before, slow and steady wins the race. The turtle, not the hare. Just give me a second. Let me get you back on screen here. I still can't seem to figure out why the camera likes to snooze like that. If somebody's got any ideas, send me an email because I'd love to find out. And it's random intervals that it does that, so who knows? World of technology. All right. Let's see if some of you answered my previous question here about nominal data as well. Okay, so anybody come up with nominal? I still don't see it. Maybe somebody said it, but it was gone. Other kinds of nominal data would be like male, female, computers, laptops, mobile phones. So those are all kinds of nominal data, okay? Now, with interval data, one thing, of course, to pay attention to is the difference between measures is the same. So from 0 to 20, it's 20. From 20 to 40, it's 20. From 40 to 60, it's 20. So here on this y-axis, we have intervals of 20,000 tons, okay? So that's what the y-axis is showing us. intervals of 20,000 tons. Now again, while I'm teaching you, pay attention to the vocabulary that I'm using because that is useful for you when you sit your IELTS exam. So write it down in your notes as you're watching the class, okay? That's right, Dota. Equipment, Jignesh, that's right. Electronics would be nominal data. Good. Gender is nominal data. Smoker, non-smoker, married, divorced are nominal data. And of course, when you see these questions in your IELTS practice books, you know what I'm talking about. And you're often, of course, or always looking at bar graphs with nominal data, okay? So for bar graphs, here's some extra vocabulary that's useful to know. Taller, shorter, okay? So it's not, so here we say taller, here we say shorter. So the taller bar for the USA indicates that almost 3 times as many fish were caught in 2005 as the much shorter bar for Finland. Okay, so you can refer to the diagram like that. So taller, shorter, higher, lower, and then words of comparison and contrast. So those subordinating conjunctions, different, however, opposite to, similarly, close to. Make sure you know a lot of those words. All right, so again, remember, bar graphs, nominal data on an interval scale. Okay, here we have a line graph. And it's a little bit bright, but you get the idea. You can kind of see it there. You see that there's a dotted line here. There's a solid line. There's a dashed line there and a thin line below here, okay? So again, the important question that we're focusing on here is when do we use different kinds of graphs and charts? So when do we use a line graph? So line graphs are used to illustrate. Notice I'm using different vocabulary here. On the last one, we used to show. And here we're saying used to illustrate correlations. This is a very good word to know for line graphs. It's an impressive word for readers. It shows your knowledge. So they're used to illustrate correlations, positive or negative, between variables x and y on interval scales, okay? So here, both the y-axis and the x-axis are interval scales. It's not name data, but it's numbers. Let me get that a little bit bigger for you so you can see those numbers. So let me enlarge here. All right, so you can see here we have the y-axis, and then here we have the x-axis. The x-axis is showing years, and the y-axis is showing us some kind of fuel that's used here. So here we have the description for the legend: fossil fuel, hydroelectric, nuclear power, wind power. So it has something to do with units of power. Now in the IELTS, you'd have a name there that would describe what that is, like 10 kilowatts or 20 kilowatts. But the main idea here is this is an interval scale with intervals of 10, okay? And at the bottom, it's another interval scale with difference of 5 years. Okay, so 1985 to 1990, 5 years, another 5 years there, another 5 years there. Okay, so it's 2 interval scales, and it's correlations on these 2 scales. Does anybody know what correlation actually means? So what is the meaning of correlation? Well, if you're practicing your prefix, root, and suffix for English words, then you know that co means together, and relation is the connection or the relationship. So it's the together relationship of these data, okay? So this dotted line here that's going down is showing the relationship that as the years increase, so we're going from 1980 to 2010. So the time is increasing. And here, by this line, we can see that the use of fossil fuels like gasoline and oil are slowly, gradually decreasing. So the relationship between time and amount is a decrease, okay? So that's the correlation. And there's a clear correlation in that specific case, okay? So again, focusing here on the more important point, line graphs are used to show correlations between two interval variables of x and y, okay? And here's some more useful vocabulary for you to jot down. Of course, you can see this all in our full course. So dotted line, solid line, segregated line, double line, gradual, slight, rapid, significant, increase, decrease, drop, lots and lots of words for line graphs. I'm not too worried about students for line graphs because that's, I think, what most students often study more than any other type of graph or line graphs. So it's fine. Just again, make sure to study the other types of graphs also. Okay, and then moving on to the next type of graphic. So here's a pie chart. Pie chart because it looks like a pizza pie. It's a circle. Pie is a synonym for a circle. You can think of a delicious blackberry pie or a pizza. That's what it is. And then it's sliced into different portions. What are pie charts used for? Pie charts are used to depict, so again, another word instead of illustrate, instead of show, used to depict the ratio, the proportion, or percentage. These are all synonyms of data from a whole, okay? So here again, we have nominal data. This is showing us favorite types of pizza. And then there are 4 kinds of pizza here. You have supreme, sausage, cheese, and pepperoni. These are some classic names of pizzas in the US and Canada, Australia. And you see the slices here for the preference of these different kinds of pizza. So this is nominal data again, right? So the names of different kinds of data of pizza. And then here you have the percentages, and if the math is correct, then this 38%, this 32%, this 18%, and this 12% all together should equal 100%, okay? So it's showing you the total of the people interviewed or surveyed who like pizza, of what kinds of pizza they like. Now, here's an interesting question. Let's say that this pie chart is a survey of people in New York City for their preference of pizza in 2000. And then let's say that there's another pie chart, because when you sit IELTS, usually it will be 3 or 4 pie charts, maybe even more. And then you have some different slices for, let's say, 2010. Now, again, just reiterating what I warned you about earlier, in this kind of a situation, you cannot say that people increase, let's say that this is 38% here and this same kind of pizza is 50% here. You cannot say that from 2000 to 2010, pepperoni pizza increased in popularity by 12%. Okay? So you cannot say that. You cannot write that. You can't write that according to these pie charts, the popularity of pepperoni pizza increased from 38 to 50%. You can't write that because that would be a line graph. Okay? We don't know what happened in 2005. Okay? Maybe in 2005, we would have another piece here that's just, let's say, 10% for the same information. So in 2005, only 10% of people surveyed chose pepperoni pizza. Then this means that what I just said previously is absolutely wrong. So we can't say that. What we can say, so what you can do, is roughly a third of people preferred pepperoni pizza in 2000. However, in 2010, half of the people surveyed preferred pepperoni pizza. Okay, so I am not showing continuity. Lukao Kilbr, yes, this is for academic IELTS, not for general. For general IELTS, task 1 is letter writing, okay? And we have lots of information about that at gieltshelp.com, okay? So keep that in mind, all right? Now, again, here's some good vocabulary when you're writing for pie charts. You can use the word slice, piece, portion. Okay, so to name these, you can say it's a slice, it's a piece, it's a portion. It's good to use synonyms, show your range of lexical resource and vocabulary. All right? Okay, so then some other thin majority. So you have a thin slice, you have a thick slice or a big slice, majority, minority, significant, insignificant. So this would be significant, this would be insignificant. So those are just some good words to learn and use for pie charts. Moving right along. All right. So here is a table, okay, and probably won't be as fancy as this on your IELTS exam. It's all black and white. There are no colors to save money, of course, and ink, so they just use black and white for IELTS. But for study's sake, it's okay to have a little bit of color. So what are tables used for? Tables are used to indicate, again, another word, so to indicate two categories of data two categories that data belong to, and further calculation. This is very important. Sometimes an IELTS Task 1 question is just a simple table, and students panic. They go, whoa, how can I write a good 150-word minimum essay with such a simple table? And you can. Remember that just like in Excel or a spreadsheet, when you have a table, you usually do further calculations with the table. Okay, so let's step back. Tables show two categories that data belong to. So here we have the number 250. 250 belongs to cloths and September. Okay, should be clothes. So belongs to clothes in September. 450 belongs to the category of food and October. And of course, the title here is money spent in 4 months. Okay. Again, just a simple example here to give you an idea. Heating, 80 belongs to heating and November. Okay, so now you might be thinking, well, what are you talking about further calculation? So what do I mean by that? Okay, what am I trying to say? You can use tables for further calculations. And if you do this on IELTS, I promise your score will be better for that task if you can express yourself clearly. So what can you do with a table? Well, the simplest calculation to do with a table is, can anybody tell me? What is the most easy kind of calculation that I can do with a table to get a better understanding of the information or to get more understanding? Do new one says sum everything, sum it all. Yeah, it's possible. I think that's a little bit extreme, Nguyen. I think there's a little, just step it back one, keep your summing a little bit. But your thinking is right. So summing and adding is the right step, or totaling, as Jubilant James is saying. Absolutely. So what you can do is you can add the columns and you can add the rows. Okay? And you'll notice for the IELTS Task 1 table questions, the numbers are usually very simple, like this one. Okay, so here, if I look at the columns, this one here is 250, 50, 150, 100. So 200, 450, 550. Okay, so this first column is 550. Second one doesn't have to be perfect. It can almost be just an approximation. 1700. This one is roughly 180 plus 110, 290. And this one here is, let's say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,300. Okay, I don't know if it's exactly right, but approximately it's correct. So if I have 550 here, 1,700 here, 290 here, and 1,300 here, then I get the total for clothes, food, heating, and entertainment. And when I have this information, now I can write that by summing together the columns, it becomes clear that the most money spent in these 4 months was on food. Second was entertainment. And then clothes and heating were a distant third and fourth. Okay, so what I just said there is literally what I would write down. Okay, so getting these numbers helps me to realize what the highest cost was, what the highest cost was, what the second highest cost was, and the lower cost expenses. Okay, now of course if I sum the rows, so if I'm summing this way, then what do I learn? So what can I figure out by summing together or adding together the rows? Just roughly. Can anybody tell me that? What information do I learn or understand from this data when I add together the rows? Yeah, there you go. Some good answers there. So James and Awima Singh Lama and Naveen are saying, well, you get the total expenditure per month. And by that, I can figure out which was the most expensive month and which was the least expensive month. So again, I can write a very powerful sentence that goes something like, after adding together the rows, it becomes clear that the most expensive month was December. The cheapest month was October. Okay? So that's the information that I get. And you can almost do it just by looking at it. Okay? So you don't need to really rack your brain trying to figure out these numbers. Just approximations. Okay? If you're really good at math, if that's your major, you might be a lot more specific. Okay? So here is some useful vocabulary for tables. This is called a cell. Okay, so one box. It's called a cell. This is a column. This is a row. Okay, this is the column heading. This is the row heading. This is the table title. Okay, that's some good information to know. And then remember these phrases: by adding together the rows, by summing the columns. So keep that in mind, learn those expressions. If you get a table type question, use it, okay? Again, remember, tables kind of similar to line graphs, as a student pointed out, but still a little bit different, okay? All right, and then here's the flow chart. Again, a little bit less common than the other types, but you might get this. What does a flow chart show? Flowcharts are used to represent the stages, phases, steps in a non-physical process. Okay, in most cases. They're sometimes used for physical as well, but then that's a diagram. So here you have Efron Company's hiring procedure. So just a made-up company, but basically it's a hiring process. So here the application hands in the resume, and then the resume is either refused or moves on, and the applicant is invited for a job interview. Following the interview, the applicant can again be refused or be presented with a job. Finally, after receiving the job, the applicant may begin work immediately or be sent for further training. Okay, that's a very simple description of this, but it works. That's what you're doing. So again, it's not physical. You can't hold it. Okay, the hiring process of a company is not something you can touch. It's non-physical. And these are the steps in this non-physical process. That's what a flowchart is used to show. That's the kind of information it's used to depict. So for this kind of essay, if you get this question, it's a very clear process essay, which means that you have your first, second, third, and then you have your fourth. Okay, so first step, second step, third step, fourth step. Now, don't just use numbers. Use words like next, after that, following this stage. Okay, so use a variety of language. We're not robots. If you write like a robot, you'll get a mark like a robot, which won't be too great. So your goal for task 1 is to describe using human language. Okay? All right. So again, some good vocabulary there. Now, in contrast to a flowchart, diagrams are used to show the steps and stages in a physical process, okay? So in this case, you have the hydrolytic cycle, which is a fancy way to say water cycle, okay? In the water cycle, let me make this a little bit bigger for you. So in the water cycle, you have evaporation, you have condensation into clouds, you have cloud formation and movement, then you have precipitation, falling of rain, you have collection of water in lakes, underground, and then movement of water back into larger bodies of water like the ocean. And of course, again, the cycle continues with evaporation. So this is a simple diagram. You might get this. It's a process in a physical sense. You can touch it, okay? It's either that or a map. We don't have a map example here for you, but we have done map examples with previous videos, so you can always check that out on our channel. All right, now, again, same kind of language if it's a process essay, so first, second, third, next, after that, following, and so on. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, again, remember, 6 types of graphics, each one slightly different, if not completely different than the other. They're used for different kinds of information, and as they're used for different types of information, so is the language different when you're describing them in writing task 1. Okay, keep that in mind. Practice each of these 6 individually and make sure that you're clear about their applications, uses, and the languages used for that. Any questions about these 6 different types of graphics? So any questions about bar, line, pie charts, tables, flowcharts, or diagrams? Any questions about these? Anything that you've gotten stuck on, or you're like, oh, what do I do if this happens? Or this has really given me a lot of pain in the past. So any questions? Now's a good time to ask me. Ashish says, how do I start? Ashish, you're jumping to the next part of the presentation with that, so I'll talk about how you start. Sandeep, I'm not sure what you mean by can you solve one full graph? Is it possible? You don't have to do a lot of math. The goal of these is not for you to do a lot of math. It's not a physics assignment. They're simple graphs, so just focus on the language more than the actual mathematics behind it. What is the last data we haven't seen yet, Jeffrey? I'm not sure what you mean by that last data. If you can explain that a little bit more clearly. Dharaj Koirala, you're asking me, you haven't done a flowchart yet. Is it necessary? Yes. Practice it because you could get it, okay? If you look at Cambridge IELTS past papers, you'll notice that flowcharts do pop up. So definitely practice at least 1 or 2 flowcharts before you sit your IELTS, okay? You don't want to airball because you haven't practiced it. Oh, I see what you're asking me, Jeffrey. So ordinal. You don't need to worry about ordinal data, Jeffrey. You won't really see that in IELTS. When you get to university, you might, but not in IELTS. Ordinal data means like first, second, third, in the sense of in a race. When people are running, you have a first place winner, second place winner, and you have an order, but the difference between the places varies, so it's not the same. In interval data, the distance is always the same. The difference is always the same. In ordinal data, it changes. Okay? I don't want to get into some high-level mathematics here. That's not my goal. So I'm I'm going to stay away from that. But if anybody's curious, you could always send me an email. Ashish, there is no maximum word limit. Again, IELTS does not tell you that there's a maximum, but for task 1, do not overstep the 20-minute time limit. So Ashish, you're actually asking me a very good question here. If you have good skills for task 1 and you can write a really solid 160, 170 word essay in 15 minutes, then use that extra 5 minutes for task 2. So if you are really good at task 1 and you can get it done sooner than the 20 minutes, then any extra time that you have, don't write more, just immediately start writing for task 2 because it's worth more, okay? So it's a better idea to spend any extra time on task 2 that you have instead of stretching your task 1 essay, okay? For all the students, I see a few students are asking about how do I start the first paragraph, how do I start the second paragraph. There is no template, okay? That's another big mistake students make is they think there's a kind of a template that they should follow. I see way too many students start paragraphs by firstly, da 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 da. You don't get points for writing firstly. Way too many students do it. It's okay, but there's nothing special about it, okay? We'll talk about task 2 later for those of you who are asking me. Let me bring up the remainder. Okay, so here is the next class. Let me just bring this up for you here. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so day after tomorrow, again, tomorrow we're going to do a task 2 example of a problem solutions essay for the members. And then on Saturday, we will do a task 1 example with everyone. This is the structure of task 1. So until then, you can think about this. Task 1 is made up of 3 parts, a good task 1 essay. There's an overview, which is about 2 to 3 sentences. It describes the main features and what you're looking at. The big part of task 1, the middle, it's about 8 to 10 sentences, is the analysis. And then the last part, which is just 1 or 2 sentences, is the summary. So that's the structure. And we'll talk more about this on Saturday with an example, okay? For today, my main goal was that you understand what kinds of task 1s you can get in academic IELTS and what you have to pay attention to, okay? I will bring up my email ID here in just 1 second. I can see a couple students asking for it. So again, this is my email if you have some questions. Adrian@aehelp.com. You can send me an email there, okay? Again, there's editing help on the websites. This is the question. I'll bring you back up on camera here. I'll show you the question from today, and I'll give you a little bit of a homework assignment here for those very studious students. The homework is the task 2 question that we looked at. It's a little bit off topic concerning task 1, but the task 2 question that we just looked at, if you want, write a response at home, send it to my email, and I will gladly send you back a score estimate of how you would perform on the IELTS. So we'll use this later as well, so you'll have a good reference of how to write a response for this. But again, for homework, you can try out this question and write a response, send it to me by email, and I'll let you know what kind of a band score they'd probably give you on IELTS, okay? All right, so again, our materials, they come from our websites. For academic IELTS, it's aehelp.com. For general IELTS, it's gieltshelp.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching today's class. I hope you picked up some valuable information. I hope you learned some important what to do's for Task 1 Academic and what not to do's for Task 1 Academic, as well as some good vocabulary. Practice at home. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Make sure to come back tomorrow for that example Task 2, and definitely come back for Saturday's class so that you can learn the specific structure and content of an IELTS Task 1 with an example, okay? Much love to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day and sweet dreams if you're going to bed and late in your country. Bye for now.